سلام و سپاس از دکتر شهرام سعید و کامران و آزاده برای ارگانایز کردن این کنفرانس و همچنین دعوت از من هم صحبتم رو به انگلیسی تهیه کردم so I'll be happy to speak in Farsi during the Q&A if it's needed. Today I want to reflect on the fundamental and often contested question, what is the place of Islam within Iranian identity? It's a question that invites a deeper exploration, not just for religion or nationhood, but of the dynamic ways in which identities are lived, experienced, and transformed. In contrast to cultural essentialism, this presentation suggests that Islam, Muslimness, and Iranianness are neither timeless essence nor pure, nor static, singular, or things like that. Instead, I propose a constructivist, phenomenological, and intersectional approach in which both Islam and Iranian identity are historically embedded, socially constructed, and lived reality across time and space. To structure our conversation, I will unfold my argument in three interrelated parts. Wish me good luck to talk about all these three things in 10 minutes, or maybe 5 more minutes. First, Islam as a lived and evolving reality. Let us begin by problematizing the notion of Islam as a fixed and monolithic entity. Rather than treating Islam as a set of timeless doctrine or rigid orthodoxy, I approach it as a lived and evolving experience, something that Muslims as social agents in different contexts and times actively interpret, contest, and embody. In other words, Islam is not simply out there as a script to be followed. It is socially constructed and continuously reimagined and reinvented tradition, to use Hobsbawm's argument, shaped by Muslims whose evolving identities are formed by multiple factors. So because Muslims changed, Islam changed. That's an approach. This constructivist lens allows us to recognize Islam, to recognize that Islam is what Muslims make of it. This is not to advocate an absolute relativism. It does not deny the importance of tradition, but it highlights the reinvention of tradition and multiple ways in which Islam is understood and practiced. Here, the experience of being Muslim is deeply shaped by intersectional factors such as gender, class, ethnicity, generation, and exposure to other non-religious cultural forms, including pre-Islamic tradition, as well as secular and Western influences. This is certainly evident in contemporary Iran. As Iranian sociologist Zakeri, based in Iran, shows, in a significant section of Iranian society today, religion has been reinterpreted in line with values such as life and the self. Religion has become manifested with a pluralistic, selective, I underline selective, and feminine character. The key feature of this feminine religiosity is religious selectivity in service of life. The main reason for such selectivity, we know that, is a form of desacralization of the sacred. قدسی که تقدس صدایی شده. The state-sponsored religiosity and its huge ineffectiveness have stripped the sacred of its sanctity, leading to the crisis of the moral authority of religion in society. To understand the changing dynamics of being Muslim today in post-revolution in Iran, I mentioned just the results of a few official surveys out of many surveys on this topic. According to one official survey published in 2023, 1402, before the revolution in 1975, 1354, 83% of the respondents said they performed daily prayer, namaz. But the number in 2023 was only 55%. 40% said they never recite the Quran, 20% did not believe in the day of judgment, Ma'ad, 32% never prayed, 37% never fasted, 61% never attended the sermon prayer, namaz jama'at, 57% did not follow the religious authority, marja taqlid. Almost 57% had little or no trust in the clergy, and approximately 73% supported the separation of religion from the state. This number was about 40% in more than 20 years ago in 2000 or 1379. And there is a report even by the Parliament Research Center on hijab, which suggests that people are generally against the compulsory hijab. However, these shifts do not signify the disappearance of traditional or popular religion. The ritualistic inflation, farbehi manasiki, a word used by Mazahiri, or revival of popular religion, din amme, or additional description of the transformation of religiosity and different expression of religiosity among Iranians. A young middle class in north of Tehran or other major cities listen to and even actually play underground music, follow feminist accounts on Instagram, believes in white marriage or actually other non-orthodox forms of sexuality, and still might actually participate in Muharram rituals, as Roja mentioned, pilgrimage to religious sites, and believe in metaphysics and vow nazr. These are just a few examples of pluralistic and selective religiosity. While traditional religion still exists in parts of society, the appeal of official religion has declined and religiosity has become more feminine. For Zakari, this feminine selectivity in religious practice has shifted religiosity from a coherent belief system to a set of flexible practices that serve lives, lack rigid boundaries, and represent a form of religious agency that serves everyday life. This life-centered, selective, pluralistic, and feminine nature of the evolving religiosity in contemporary Iran, he argues, can be termed as pink religion, mazhab surati, in contrast to black religion, red religion, or even actually green religion. Religion in the service of life, and definitely reinventing religion in the service of life. Definitely, the Women Life Freedom Movement is a great example of this, and here I want to actually remind you of a very popular poems which represent the feminization of religion in the context of the green in the context of Women Life Freedom Movement. A very actually popular poem called Reinvention, basically in the context of reinvention of God. Khuda Noore, Khuda Mahsas, Khuda Sultan Qalb Nikas. God is light, God is Mahsa, God is the ruler of heart of Nikah. Khuda Zulfay dar bade, God is the flowing hair in mind. Khuda Ummid baraye fardas, God is hope for tomorrow. خدا اون تکنونی است که مهشاد داشت میچرخون. God is the piece of bread مهشاد was spinning. خدا فریاد این نسل که از تزویر بیزاره. God is the scream of generation sick of hypocrisy. خدا وجدان و آگاهی است. خدا هر لحظه بیداره. God is conscious and awareness. God is always awake. خدا اینجاست تو آینه. This is very important. خدا اینجاست تو آینه. This is you. تو آینه پاشو امروز خدایی کن که راز زندگی اینه. God is here in the mirror. Get up and divine and be divine today, for that is the secret of life. خدا پایان این شب هاست. God is the end of these nights. I think this poem actually represents the evolving nature of being religiosity and God as a symbol of religion. So this evolving I guess our experience of a broader pluralistic Islam and Muslimness challenging the binary narratives of often imposed from above, whether by the Islamic State or Orientalist discourses, or Orientalism in reverse for that matter, which reduce religion to a set of legalistic, state-defined practices. But lived religion resists that containment, it adopts, subverts, and negotiates. And here, of course, if there is time during question and answer, I can actually talk about the very concept of religion and Islam in particular, using Hamid Dabash's argument, where Islam across the history actually always had the habit of habitual dialogue with other, other cultures and traditions, from Judaism, Christianity, Hindu, Buddhism, of course, Sanskrit, modern post-enlightenment, and so many other things. So basically, by looking at Islam through these constructivist, dialectical, and intersectional approaches, we understand Muslim identity as fluid, contested, and situational. Muslimness is an evolving relationship between multiple factors in every life. So that's the first part. The second part, quickly, I want to draw your attention to Iran's cultural identity as something which is hybrid. Having situated Islam as a dynamic construct, let us now turn to a broader question: what constitutes Iranian identity? I think it's a hybrid identity. Many scholars talk about different components of Iranian identity, and here we can talk about the national, like pre-Islamic identity, the religious Islam or other religiosity for those who are not Muslims, and modern Western civilization, modern Western values as component of Iranian identity. Historically, these traditions have not existed in isolation. They have been in constant dialogue, tension, and synthesis. This is visible in the intellectual and political movements that shape modern Iran. Iranian nationalists have absorbed Islamic and Western influences. Socialists draw from the nationalism and religion, and Muslim forces have engaged with both nationalism and modern Western socialism. And there are examples of these, of course, across the, Iran's history. I just mentioned a few names and figures. This doesn't mean these guys were perfect. They have their own limitation, but they are actually a good example of this synthetic hybrid identity. One of them definitely is Muhammad Mossadegh, who actually successfully, relatively combined democratic nationalism that was informed by elements of Islamic ethics, liberal and modern democratic values, and some degrees of welfare state. Khalil Maleki, a democratic socialist, a pioneer of indigenous socialism, who was deeply influenced by both socialism and democratic nationalism. Mustafa Shuaiyan, from the tradition of Marxism, who was definitely influenced by democratic nationalism, Marxism, and some elements of Islam. Muhammad Nakhshab, the founding father of socialist theist movement, Khudaparastan Socialist, who definitely combined and synthesized socialism and Islam, and definitely talks about the spirituality of Islam and how Islam and socialism have common ground. And last, certainly not the least, in this category, Ali Shariati, a modern post-colonial Muslim who advocates for indigenous democratic socialism, and definitely his trinity of emancipation, azadi, barabari, irfan, freedom, equality, social justice, and something we can call it civil spirituality, actually offers a novel perspective on an alternative modernity to challenge the trinity of oppression, which is zar, zur, tazbir, tigh, tala, tasbih, gold, coercion, deception. So I'm just trying to show that how some of these actually intellectuals created some sort of dialogic and dialectical identity. This hybridity is not a weakness, it is a strength. It also challenged the idea of pure Nab identity, either in a pure Persianness, Iranianness, pure Muslimness, a pure modern Westernness. Such purity and Nab simply doesn't exist. To use Mawlavi's phrase, in chanin shiri khuda ham nafarid. There is no such thing as pure identity. It's everywhere basically hybrid. We are all byproduct of complex interaction of ideas, movements across times and space. While acknowledging our hybrid identity, it is also essential to recognize and respect our differences and engage with one another not as enemies, but as adversaries. To use Chantal Mouffe's concept, not through antagonism, but through agonism. This dialogical approach allows these competing regions of Iranianness to coexist, reinvent themselves, and look forward to the future, not a nostalgic, imaginary past, a retrotopia that some of the, I guess, monarchies actually trying to create this, which in a past which never actually existed. Then this brings me to the third part of my presentation, to challenge this idea of purity and advocate the evolving nature of Muslimness. And this is the transformation of Iranian society from Islamism to post-Islamism. And you are familiar with the concept of post-Islamism. I guess Asif Bayat and a few other scholars actually talk about this. Post-Islamism is not post-Islam. Post-Islamism talks about a project and also a condition. Here, as a project, it actually goes beyond the binaries of sacred and secular, religion and reason, faith and freedom, I guess tradition and modernity, and try to synthesize this in a very successful manner. As a condition, and particularly social condition, it talks about the exhaustion and the decline and the failure of Islamism as a project, and also a massive demographic, structural, discursive transformation in Iranian society, thanks to the revolution, thanks to the unintended consequence of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and so many other factors which all are familiar with that. So we are talking about the discursive and generational shift from Islam as a state ideology to Islam as an ethical resources or one component of identity, which is post-Islamism. What is really important here in this context is that post-Islamism challenged the idea of Islamic State. Islamic State, in theory, is an oxymoron. It's an impossible state. It's a post-colonial invention which doesn't really even actually exist in Islamic tradition. It's a byproduct of Islamism in response and reaction to the failure of autocratic modernization, top-down secularization. We are all familiar with this. So definitely, in this sense, we are talking about some sort of, I guess, perhaps secularization from below. But at the same time, I want to emphasize that post-Islamism doesn't necessarily mean privatization of religion. I don't think...
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. Privatization of religion actually is not actually existed. I think it was a wishful thinking of 18th and 19th century. Public religion is a fact of modern life, like it or not. So that's definitely something we want to acknowledge. Then another thing I want to draw your attention with respect to post-Islamism in Iranian society is a metaphor of rainbow god, Khodai Rangin Kaman, during the Women Life Freedom Movement, Kian Pir Falak, I guess his painting. And this actually metaphor, I very much like it to show that the evolution of, I guess, religion, a rigid religion to a rainbow religion, rainbow god, which actually appreciate diversity and difference, beauty in multiplicity, and basically spirituality even actually exists in public. To conclude, the dialectics of Islam and Iranian identity cannot be understood through rigid binaries. It is not Islam versus modernity, democracy, or other components of Iranian hybrid identity. Rather, we are seeing it is the emergence of pluralistic, inclusive, and evolving sense of Iranianness. In the age of post-Islamism and post-secularism, I would be happy actually to elaborate on it. I think we are living in the age of both post-Islamism and post-secularism, where both religion and secularism are more humble. They do not have their arrogance of the past. And this actually invites for more negotiation and definitely coexistence. In the age of post-Islamism and post-secularism, identity is no longer about purity. It is about negotiation, dialogue, and coexistence. What we need is not consensus, but what Chantal Mouffe actually calls agnostic pluralism, a space where different identities engage each other critically but constructively. The This requires remaining both Islam and Iran to be, I guess, in a dialogue. Islam not as a state ideology, but as a cultural, ethical tradition open to reinterpretation, a civil Islam functioning in civil society under a civil or Urfi secular state. Similarly, and that's my last sentence, Iran not as a monolithic nation state, but as a mosaic of voices, Persian and other ethnicities, religious and secular, feminist and traditional, pious and agnostic. Thank you very much.